Radhe Radhe. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Suranandana Brajajanaranjano. Jasuranandana Brajajanaranjano. Jamunatira Bhanachariya. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Few weeks. Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jasuranandana Brajajanaranjano. Jasuranandana Brajajanaranjano. Jasuranandana Brajajanaranjano. Yamunatira Vanachariya. Yamunatira Vanachariya. Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Sri Radha Madhava ki, Sri Radha Giridhari ki, Sri Sri Radha Dhamodar ki, Shri Dhamodar Mas ki, Shri Kartik Bhrat ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Jai Om Vishnu Bhad Samveda Bhakti ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Vishnu Madhaya Krishna Mustaya Murti Shmari Bhakti Varanta Swami Niti Namani Sri Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachari Shri Shasanyamari Vasyata Adi Shatharane. Hare Krishna. Govinda. Do I have both of your permission to give class today?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Well, it's true. If you speak in the presence of more advanced devotees, it's an offense, so you have to take permission. Okay. You haven't heard class yet. You may change your mind after class. I'd like to renege on that blessing. Retract my blessing. So this morning we're reading from the Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 26th chapter, text 38. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jamaduriyachirabo Bharaki Jai. Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam. Please chant.
Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Vedadabhut
Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam. Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam. Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam. Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Chakshurupo Palambhanam. Anyone else in this August assembly would like to chant? Would you like to chant? Vayoscha Sparsha Tanmatrad Rupam Dai Viritadabhut Samutitam Tatastejas Tejas Rupo Palambhanam. Word for word. Vayoho, from air, cha, and Sparsha Tanmatrat, which evolves from the subtle element touch. Rupam, form, Daiva Iritat, according to destiny. Abhut, evolved. Samuttitam, arose. Tataha, from that. Tejaha, fire. Chakshuhu, sense of sight. Rupa, color and form. Upalambanam, perceiving. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms and color. Please repeat. By interactions of the air and the sensations of touch, one receives different forms according to destiny. By evolution of such forms, there is fire, and the eye sees different forms and color. Purport. Because of destiny, the touch sensation, the interactions of air, and the situation of the mind, which is produced of the ethereal element, one receives a body according to his previous activities. Needless to say, a living entity transmigrates from one form to another. His form changes according to destiny and by the arrangement of a superior authority which controls the interaction of air and the mental situation. Form is the combination of different types of sense perception. Predestined activities are the plans of the mental situation and the interaction of air. Om Agyantimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksulanminitam Dena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Bhashadi Gaura Bhakti Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we're still discussing the evolution of the different elements in this material world. This word daiva iritat, according to destiny, is something that has to be thought about, because destiny, the idea of a predestination, free will, these come up all the time. It's a big question for those who are thoughtful. Most people don't think about it. They just think that, what is that, determination or something, and the mode of ignorance or something. You just work real hard. All there is work. You work real hard, you get a result. If you don't get it, you just work harder. Right? There's that famous song by some country western singer. I just skipped my mind. 16 tons, what do you get? Oh, yeah. Ernie Jones? Right? Used to sing it? Okay. Right. So it's an oldie. So just work very, very hard. But what do you get?
Another day older and deeper in debt.
Right. The song ends with death or something, just like Prabhupada talks about the syllables in Sanskrit. Pa, 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 ma. The last one is ma, which means ultimately it all ends in death. Big endeavor, foaming at the mouth, so many different things, but ma is death. Fear is there. All these symptoms of pavarga, the pavargas. It says apavarga is the other path. So, but this destiny is describing here that the bodies we get, we're responsible for them. And of course, Krishna is it says here, by the arrangement of a superior authority. Dive into Trena is also there in this canto. Right? Have we already gone by that verse? I think it's a little bit later on. The dive into Trena, it talks about the jiva taking shelter of the soul of the womb by superior arrangement, like that. But the cause of that accommodation, if you will, is our own mental state, as described here. Our mental state and the mental situation, the interaction of air, because we do have to move along, like that. The life airs are there. You have 5 gross ones, and you have 5 subtle ones moving in the body, like that. So when the subtle body goes, I imagine that subtle life airs may even be pushing, like that. But definitely the mind and intelligence. So there's a section in the Bhagavad Gita. I'd like to read the verses first, which Krishna is elaborating on this very point about the living entity moving from one body to the next. And this is from the 15th chapter, text 8. Shariram yad avapnoti yachchap utkramatishvaraha gritvaitani samyati vayurgandam ivashayat. You know what that verse is? And you recognize it? Besides Dravida? The living entity in the material world, that's us, carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. So this is an analogy, just like air carries aromas. Just like sometimes at Tuesday mornings. Is it Tuesday mornings a gentleman comes to suck out all the stuff from the grease trap? That's not an aroma, that's a stench. So maybe that's not a good example, but everyone in the temple definitely experiences that one, right? You got to close the kitchen door like that. There's some horrible. So the air is carrying that smell, but also sometimes you can go up to the front and all those roses. You can smell the roses, nice rose garden and so on. So the air carries that aroma. And so in the same way, we're carried by our conception of life to another gross body. So that's what's being referred to in this Bhagavatam verse. So text 9, Shrotram chakshu, sparshanam cha, rasanam grihanam eva cha, adishtaya manaschayam vishaya upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Text 10, the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature, but one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. See the vimudha narupashanti. What does vimudha mean? Yeah, very foolish. Nanupashanti. Can't see it. And then it says, pashanti jnana chakshushaha. But who does see it? Jnana chakshushaha, one who has the eyes of knowledge. So, and then the last verse I'll read. The endeavoring transcendentalist, who are situated in self-realization, can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. That's an interesting point, because there are many people who, just reading an article, SBNR. You know what that stands for? SBNR. No. This is a new trend. There's actually even, I don't know what you would call it, an acronym. I'm SBNR. You know what that means? Spiritual but not religious. That's a new trend. I'm spiritual but not religious. Just read an article by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu in one of his books about that. But the point is that there are many people who say they're spiritual, right? But still they can't understand this principle. They can't understand it because it's described here. A real transcendentalist has some qualifications of vairagya and jnana, austerity and cultivation of knowledge. It's not just sentiment. So if one's spirituality is just sentimental, one still can really understand the soul. The soul becomes something else, something sentimental. Oh, that person really has soul. That singer has soul, or whatever. Like the Hridana Maharaj gives one class he was talking about when he was in South America. They brought one couple, and the woman was talking about how she had a woman's soul. Like that. She couldn't understand that the soul, there's a woman's soul and a man's soul. The Bali concept of life is going very deep on that one. No, he's trying to explain the soul is different. Prabhupada was trying to explain to her, this is Prabhupada in the room, and she couldn't understand that the woman, there's not a woman's soul, a female soul, and a male soul. So you can't see it, even though these were spiritually minded people, they couldn't understand that point. So, this transmigration of the living entity from one body to the next and having a particular set of senses, our nose, our ears, our eyes, all grouped about the mind, we're the ones responsible for what we have and what we'll have in the future. So, what does that mean? Destiny. Sometimes people think destiny means something forced upon us. And I guess on one hand you can say it is, because we put ourselves in a situation, just like years ago. I haven't heard any news of this in the last few years, but some very foolish people in Yosemite, right above waterfalls, were wandering in the water to get some photos of themselves. And you know what happened to them? Right over the falls. Right? So one of them, I forget, Mahabar can tell me which falls it was, because he's been there. But one of the person went in to get a picture. So, I'll take a picture of me backing in the water. All these signs here, don't go in the water, you're too close to the waterfall, right? Big, I mean, these are big waterfalls. These are like, 10 stories down, like that. So the person starts getting pulled out into the current, so the other person goes in to save him. Guess what happens to that person? And the third person went in to save them. All three of them went over the waterfall. So, where's that connection on that? I was going to give you a good... Oh, you put yourself in a situation. So what happens? The current takes you. You've put yourself in a current. You are forced. You are forced. So if we wade out too far into the current of material nature, what's going to happen? You think the falls in Yosemite are high. There's some pretty big waterfalls in this material nature, like Brahmaloka down to Patalaloka. What did I do? Right? So sometimes you hear that. Someone in heavenly planets is cursed. They become a snake or something, or a bug, or a lizard, or whatever. What kind of fall is that? That's a big fall. So what it is, there are currents running in this material nature, the modes of nature. Like that. And we go a little too far, and then all of a sudden, whoosh, gone. So you can say, well, it's not my fault. Well, it is your fault. Like that. Yeah. And then sometimes these people try to sue. Right? And that's why wherever you go, they have all these signs everywhere. Any possible thing. Just like you see these ladders. You go this, on top they have to put these signs, don't stand on this step. Because people have stood on that step and fallen off. And they said, well, no one warned me. There's no common sense. Like that. If you do foolish things, something horrible is going to happen to you. So that's why all these manufacturers have to put signs on everything, because people are so stupid, and then they do it, they go, well, no one warned me. It's not my fault. Victim mentality like that. Like that. So I read something, an article on this, and these big, lures are? Lures. You go fishing? You've been fishing? Lure, big ones like this, big hooks on it, I guess. And there's a sign on it, do not swallow. But you know why that sign's on there? Lead. It's made with lead. I guess if people are so stupid, they're going to swallow because of the hooks. And this thing's this big. It says, do not swallow. So, hopefully the fish can't read it, right? So take it off when you go fishing, So the point being is that you have to be very, very careful. There are very, very strong currents always flowing. And actually, the upside of that are there are even stronger currents of Krishna consciousness flowing. That's the good takeaway. The more powerful currents are the ones flowing towards the spiritual world. But we have to put ourselves into that current. What are some of those currents, would you say? What's one of those currents, the nice currents we want to be floating in? Kirtan. What kind? Name some. Or are you talking about actually drinking nectar? Okay, just drinking nectar prasad. Hearing the Bhagavatam. Deities. Devotee association. Like that. Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu. It's so powerful, just 1/11 of a second of that current, all one's life is successful. Like that. So these are the currents we want to keep ourselves in. Like that. And they'll carry us away. Because that's ultimate, because jiva is very small. What can the jiva do? Jiva can't do anything. Jiva is just kind of, like Prabhu gave the example, football, meaning a soccer ball. You know, these soccer games, they're just like whack, and it goes all the way down the field, and whack, it goes all the way back. It just gets knocked all over the place. Little ball, they're just kicking it everywhere. So the comparison is the jiva in this material world is just getting knocked all over the place by the modes of material nature. So the jiva is very small. He's just carried away by the internal, external energy of the Lord. That's marginal. He's just being pushed around. But his pushing around is not to the whims of some other living, the Supreme Lord. That's what people are saying. No. Well, you have a Christian theology where you've got competition. God has a competitor. We don't ascribe to that understanding at all, or idea that God has a serious competitor. You know what his name is? Begins with a D. The devil. Satan, yes, he's got a few names. Watch out. He goes by different names. I'm not the devil, my name's Satan. Like that. So they think like that. But actually, there is no competitor. God has no competitor. So the jiva, his free will, it's described here, the mental condition, Prabhupada says, the mental situation. Whatever our mental situation is, the current takes us. Like that. Current being described here, and in the verses we read, is the current of actually flowing into another body. Wow. Everything's moving. The material nature is known as jagat. Jagat means that which is always changing. Even though people, at least when things are going well, they don't want things to change. Like that. Even some people, things aren't going so well, they're still afraid of change. That's why some people, you see that they're not doing very well, and they never seem to change that. Because they're actually afraid of change. They're afraid of change. So they just, even though things aren't going very well, maybe there's not much money, the relationships aren't very good, where I live isn't very good, they're afraid of change. Remember, it could get worse. There are people like that. There are certain communities where, oy vey, I have troubles, let me tell you the troubles I have. Like that. So I read an article once about maybe South America, a jungle, Aborigine tribe. They're always getting sick. And then whoever was there, Peace Corps or some kind of philanthropist or something, scientists and met doctors, they did a search, and what they found out was there's a little tiny bug that lived in the clay of their huts, was biting them and causing all the infant mortality and people being sick all the time. So they presented it to the chief of the tribes, this is what the problem is, and this particular bug only resides in this area in the clay. So if you move your village, this way over here a few miles or 10, 15 miles, you'll never have to suffer this again. You know what they did? That's right, nothing. They didn't want to move. They just wouldn't move. And they just stay here. Why is that? Interesting, isn't it? Psychology. But so the principle being that we are the architects of our own destiny. We're talking about destiny, so we're responsible for it. But Krishna is the person who arranges everything. He's in the heart, he's the witness, he's the sakshi, and he is arranging. Okay. Don't worry, Krishna will give you what you want. It's only a question of what our desires are. So the process of Krishna consciousness is purifying our desires. Desires won't go away, they just have to be purified. And actually that purification is just reviving what is naturally there. Because the desire to stay in the material world is a foreign desire, it's an insane desire. And it's like people go crazy and they do crazy things. And they have to go to a hospital or something and work on it, because you can't do things like that. People do very dangerous things or foolish things because their mind is not proper. Right? So they bring them back to sanity, like that. And then they can function properly in society, like that. Just like on the way here this morning, about 3:30 I was on the highway, and I noticed some police cars. Because I'm on 805, that big bridge that crosses some police cars were stopped out on the bridge with their lights flashing. I was thinking, uh-oh. Someone jump or something? Or, what's going on? You usually don't see police, out on the bridge, 2 or 3 police cars stopped with the lights going. It's like, uh-oh. Maybe an accident or someone jumped or, just like you see those signs on Coronado Bridge. every about 30, 40, 50 feet. Don't jump. Call 911 or something, helpline. It's not that bad. Please don't jump. Please call this number. But when our mind is deranged, we have so many crazy desires. So that for the soul, the desire to stay in the material world, we should wear T-shirts. I'm crazy. As long as I want to stay in this material world, I'm crazy. We should have like a little tattoo or something like that. Not tattoos, but a little reminder. It's crazy. We're insane. Because we don't belong here. We won't be happy here. It's not our place. So it's a derangement of the consciousness. So Krishna consciousness means to cool the fever down, to become healthy once again. The natural desires of serving Krishna, returning to the spiritual world. And that current will carry us home back to Godhead. That's the Vaikuntha trade winds. Like Prabhupada said about the winds in Mayapur. Vaikuntha, right? The breezes. Vaikuntha breezes. So the Vaikuntha breeze is the association with the devotees in the process of devotional service. And those trade winds, are you familiar with the trade winds? Yeah, trade wind. In the ocean, there's certain latitudes that ships would get into, and the winds are always blowing in that direction. That's how they traveled all over the world so quickly in these big clipper ships and so on. You have to get into the trade winds, and then you just go. They're always blowing that direction, east and west. They knew the trade winds in the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, like that. So there are trade winds blowing both ways. Like we discussed it a week or two ago, we gave class, we talked about those two verses in the Upadeshamrita. Those things which will destroy our devotional service and those things which will help our devotional service prosper. So those are two different, you can say, trade wind verses. So which winds do we want to get in? Because if you get in it, yeah, like that. So I'll end with this. Because we have to be very careful. And sometimes, unfortunately, we know devotees ourselves and aren't careful, and we get carried away. And then they're gone. And I've told devotees a few times, I heard this, I thought it was worth repeating. When Maharaj was giving a class, and he was saying about, there was that one question about devotee, it was Hanumak Prashek Maharaj, is that how do you say it? Prashika. And Prabhupada was asked about devotees leaving, and Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised at who stays. And he was saying, kind of jokingly, he said, therefore, when you meet devotees you haven't seen in a long time, you say, oh, Hare Krishna, Prabhu, I'm so happy to see you. I'm very surprised you're still here. Please have my humble obeisances. So, yeah, that should be the surprise. Oh, I'm very surprised you're still here. Why? Because if you walk out too far in that water, over the falls, it happens. It happens over and over again. But fortunately, by Krishna's mercy, even though we go over the falls, we can recover. It's a drop, but Krishna is very kind, and we can recover. But don't take advantage of that mercy, because going over those falls is very, very painful. And in fact, I've never known of anyone going over the falls who lived. Right? Yeah, and they find them sometimes a week or two or a few months later, all decomposed somewhere on a rock. It's yeah. So, anyways, but I want to leave you with that on that happy note, like that. That there are those beautiful Vaikuntha breezes that will just carry us back home, back to God. They're available. They're always blowing, just like the trade winds are always blowing. It's just a matter of open our sails into those breezes, like that. So, are there any questions or comments on this amazing verse in the Bhagavatam? Yes, Prabhu.
You referenced chapter 15, text 9 of the Bhagavad Gita, and I just wanted to get a little, enhance the understanding of the verse according to years ago, because I always look in the dictionary. So that also includes Sanskrit dictionaries, and the last word of that verse is upasevate. When the living entity does taking another gross body, attains a certain time of year, eye, tongue, nose, sense of touch, which are moved about the mind, he thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. That enjoys is upasevate, which is perfectly accurate translation. But it also has another meaning, which I would put in dictionary, and that is becomes addicted to it. And that's really what happens. You become addicted to it. And hindrance to devotional life. And what happens is that all this addiction to different, I think Prabhu talks, you get a husband, even addicted to hope, to a stool, one hope. So, this, like it says, the lust covers the knowledge. So we know from experience, hopefully not our own experience, but from living in this world, that when somebody gets addicted to liquor or some other substance, it covers their intelligence. Even though they may have inklings of, I'm destroying my life, if that's a strong stream like that, you have to have a very powerful addiction to some sense of it. But really, he was saying there's always addiction in every form of life. And that strong desire is what's been covering us for millions of years. So that addiction has to be turned to Krishna. Prabhu used that word sometimes. It's become addicted to especially hearing and chanting and the holy name. And that cures the devotees. It's like methadone, really a big methadone program. So I just thought that would say that they were addicted.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's a gross manifestation that they're able to see. But more subtle would be this, that without the movement of the air, the mind cannot function as an instrument for desire of the living entity. So that verse you quoted about moving like the fragrance in the air, it actually, with this verse, you can pair it up and see that literally also it's the instrument through which the mind manifests the desires in the mind, and that manifests in the mind.
Yeah. I'm sure probably what's being referred to in these verses are those subtle airs. We're not thinking about just like the air. There's these subtle, very, very subtle things. In Sada Buddha, in many classes, he said, I've heard this whole idea of what's going on in the brain, and the neurons and the synapses. So they don't really know. They don't. It's very, very, and that's why, to map it, they call it mapping the mind, the brain and all. That's why it's like the idea of IT, artificial AI, artificial intelligence and so on is, the very principle is ridiculous but the idea, well, if we can just replicate the brain, but they have no idea how to do that, let alone having the facility. Who knows what size of a computer to have to do to actually be able to do something like that. They don't really, he said even the idea that the brain is like a computer is an idea. They don't really know that. How that's all going, like they say, the subtle airs and the mind thinking and so quick, and they don't know. It's so sophisticated that they're really just in the initial stages of barely understanding what's going on upstairs. They're groping in the dark, so... And this is Krishna's inferior energy. Spiritual energy is a lot better, Prabhu. It's been a long time. That's where we need to go. It's like having a, brand new Mercedes or driving an old Pinto that's shot to hell. What kind of car you want to drive? Yeah. I had speaking of Pintos, I lived in BV when I was up there running Bhaktivedanta Village back in the 80s. And the farm had an old Pinto that actually had a leak in it, underneath it, of carbon monoxide. I was driving my family once to go into town, Visalia, and it knocked me out. Fell asleep at the wheel. Like that, because I kind of went to the medium and whacked a wooden sign and woke up. Everyone was chanting Hare Krishna, so that was a good sign. All my kids, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And my wife, Krishna. But so an old Pinto, got to watch out for those things, but just... Glad I didn't know that. But yeah, it had a leak of old Pinto had a carbon monoxide leak in it. So anyway, so we can end here. All glories.
One thought about the air and the mind, but I just thought of that this, it's broken by process, controlling the mind by controlling.
Yes. Yeah, pranayama. Yeah. Yes.
You're telling that story about those people that fell over the waterfalls?
Yeah.
That third fool that fell over trying to save those two that were goners anyway. If you would have read Srimad Bhagavatam or lived at the Canto Gita, you would have read that story about the pigeons that got stuck in the trap. And then they realizing that we better just let them go and kick some nuts.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's interesting. Where would that happen? There's all these signs. Don't go in the water. Don't go in the water. And people still do it.
I read where one of our god sisters was sharing something Srila Prabhu said. Evidently one of our godbrothers had been swept up in a list of there was another devotee and he got killed. So Srila Prabhupada initially in the conversation he said, well, at least they'll be given another chance to take up spiritual life from where they left off. And then immediately after that he said, well, he could have gone back home and not having this life. What a loss. What can you do? So if you don't listen to and follow the instructions given, what can you do?
Yeah. What can be done? Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Dharmasetu ki jai. How did that work, Dr. Zach? Are you in business?
Yeah.
So this is the new beach.
Deep, yeah. They had 65 community grade line when they were in that.
Thank you for that. Someone's making this very extravagant comment. Oh, these are not the idea. Feel free. Oh, nice. Yeah, I like that. All right, I'll try to get it here. I'll try to get whoever sets it up. Ryan, do you know Ryan? Okay. Lakshmi. Well, you said Lakshmi. Yeah. Yeah,